Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
Doing all right. Here on the East Coast today for our special coast-to-coast Packers podcast episode.
Yep, a little, East Coast, West Coast, ping-ponging back and forth. We are here a day later than usual, so apologies for that, but, traveling and schedules and stuff made us do a day later. But we are here to break down the NFL draft, and this is going to be not a deep dive. We're going to be doing deep dives into all of these guys, so don't worry. So we're mostly just going to touch on each pick. It's going to be very vibes-based, and I don't know about you, Dad, but vibes, first blush, pretty good.
Vibes are good.
The vibes seem pretty good from this class, but we're going to talk all about it. We're also going to talk about the Jayden Reed extension, which, could they not have saved this for June when we have more content to fill? Like the fact that this is same day of the draft and we're going to have to do all of this all at once. I mean, this could have been its own episode in a month. That would have been fine.
I felt like it seemed with the timing that it was pretty clear they wanted to get this done before the draft so they could say, okay, we can basically ignore wide receiver now because we're set for the next few years.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second and what it meant for the draft, because I think both of us coming in were like, I'd be surprised if they don't take a receiver, but then we get this news. Before we get to any of that, though, just want to pitch a couple of things. If you like what you hear, subscribe, whether that's Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Tell a friend, leave a comment, leave a review, leave a like. We're also on Blue Sky at Father Son Packer for updates on, Packers related news, new episodes, et cetera, et cetera. So check that out as well. Once again, at Father Son Packer on Blue Sky. But we already talked about it, so I guess let's just start talking in depth about it. Jayden Reed extended by the Packers on day 2 of the draft. So right before the draft was about to happen, we get the news coming across the desk. Jayden Reed gets a 3-year, $50.25 million extension with $20 million guaranteed. Makes him around the 29th highest paid receiver by, average annual value. It's very similar to the deal that Rashid Shaheed got from the Seahawks this offseason, so kind of in line with that. Thoughts when this, came across the timeline, Dad? What were you thinking?
So I was, pleasantly surprised. I didn't think this was necessarily going to happen, at least not this early. I thought there was a chance. I wasn't sure just how much they were willing to spend or whether they would not want to carry, 2 6-foot, 1 pound receivers for 4 straight years on the same together.
I think that's a good point, because it is interesting that Golden and Reed, 2 smaller receivers now, which we assume are going to be playing together a lot, and
2 of our top 3. I mean, and there's no ambiguity about that anymore either,
or at least there shouldn't be. We might see. There should not be Bo Melton wide receiver 3 snaps.
Well, that's still not giving us a second big receiver.
That's true, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, when I say 2 of our top 3 are smaller, I was including Melton and Reed.
Yeah, maybe. But my point is, we never know exactly what's going to go on in the receiver room because it feels like year to year. But we do have a new receiver coach, so maybe that might have something to do with it also. But either way, it does seem like the receiver room has been streamlined. And they are picking and also Brian Gutekunst mentioned, afterwards when he was asked about it, that they still want to get an extension done with Watson. So that's on the table still. This doesn't seem like an either or scenario, but it seems
it does not, and that would have been surprising if they went with basically not holding on to any of their bigger blocking wide receivers.
I think it would, if they don't end up holding on to Watson, it's a cost thing. Because if he's asking for more than Alec Pierce-Scott, it's or even what Alec Pierce-Scott, it's can you give him that much money when he hasn't played a full season in several years? So that's a question mark there. But focusing on Reed for a second, since we're kind of getting a little off topic, I think really good deal in terms of the amount of money. Adding 3 years on, he's also a leader in the locker room. He's Matt LaFleur has talked about how good he is with the younger guys too. And just to lock him up. I mean, every year I think we ask for more Jayden Reed in the offense. That's a thing consistently. And hopefully,
and he's had a year where he's led the team in receiving.
Yeah. And so hopefully we see more of him in the offense this year. We see a few more, I would love to see him get some chances at outside receiver. It doesn't seem like we're going to get that, but either way, I think it's a good deal though, in terms of coming in barely in the top 30 of receiver contracts. We've seen how talented he can be. I think it's a total no-brainer at this number.
It was a great deal from the Packers' perspective. I thought what I saw was only like less than $17 million a year in new money.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not. I think it's a good deal. I hope we can still get Watson done, but like I think the only way that doesn't happen is if like the asking price is like
Becomes
obscenely
like
high.
32
But
or something.
yeah, but I think also not taking a receiver in this draft kind of indicates that there is probably some confidence in being able to re-sign him, I would imagine.
They must have some confidence that they're able to sign him. Otherwise, I think they would have shown an urgent need for
to get a
a
bigger guy.
tall, fast receiver.
Yeah, and they did get a tall, fast receiver, but not until undrafted free
Maybe
agency.
not so urgently.
Yes, exactly. But so good for Jayden Reed. Congratulations to him. Pretty awesome. Excited to see him in the green and gold going forward. Any final things you wanted to touch on there from that? I mean, it seems like just
I'm excited for how the wide receiver room will look with a concentrated targets on three very fast, talented receivers. And would we say that Gutekunst moneyballed the receiver room?
In terms of like, hey, you're playing these guys. These are the guys we're playing.
Absolutely.
I think yes. I think it also is like. I mean, I hope this is like this. The vision is now like cohesive between the front office and the coaching staff. It's like these are the guys we want to focus on in the offense. Plus,
let's
Kraft
concentrate.
Plus Kraft and Jacobs. Like it should be those five guys. Like 90% of the touches should go to those five guys, and then you can sprinkle in Savion. You can sprinkle in some of these other guys, but those guys should clearly be the focus of the offense. And it seems like that's kind of the direction we are going forward.
Yeah, I look at it as saying, okay, I feel quite confident that both Kraft and Watson are going to get extended. And so what we're looking at is our receiving core is set for the next 3 years.
Assuming that, everyone performs well and like it goes well this year.
Even just performs as expected.
But you could see like, hey, if they have a down year, they might try to add people to that room. Like
possibly,
that's like on the board.
But you feel like pretty good about the.
I feel good about this group of three plus Kraft and Jacobs. Like as
Kraft,
a five,
right.
as a group
You've
of
got
five
a really
skill players,
set there.
Like you feel good about that, and like hopefully with Kraft coming back to because Kraft at the start of last year was looking like one of the like 2 or 3 best tight ends,
top two tight ends in the league.
He looked unstoppable. So like I mean. It's an exciting group of skill players. I think it's going to be.
And have you seen, speaking about him looking unstoppable before, what he came to
no, I don't think
camp
so.
looking like?
Well, did you see Zach Tom in that picture? Zach Tom looked like comically large. I don't think it even looked
actually
real.
that particular photo I think has been
altered. It has to be. Altered. I thought it might have been because it was like
I've seen that same picture. Without Zach Tom looking that much, that was on front that much.
That makes sense because I was like, "There's no way this is real. There's no way he's this big."
Yeah, but Kraft came back looking huge,
jacked. Yeah, and hopefully, with extra muscle weight, can still, be moving around as well. Because that was the thing. He looked like the biggest, fastest, strongest dude on the field for like the entire first half of last year, and it was just like, just keep giving him the ball, just keep giving him the ball. But anyway, we got a lot to talk about draft wise though, so. Let's move on to that. So we're going to go through, each of these players. We're going to give our brief thoughts on the selection. And then I think at the end, we're going to give our general thoughts on the class overall, which I think you might already be able to tell we're feeling pretty good about it. But we'll give our general, overall thoughts. And then we'll touch on the draft as a whole, for the entire league, some interesting trends like at the tight end position, some risers, some fallers, et cetera, et cetera. But Dad, let's start off with the Packers' first pick of the night on, day 2, first pick of the draft. Had to wait a day, but I think, it worked out waiting. So round 2, pick 52, the Packers select Brandon Cisse, corner out of South Carolina. On the consensus big board, he was 44th, so kind of in that range. What were your thoughts when this pick happened?
So I was very happy. I felt like there weren't that many picks left that were kind of 52 worthy. By the time it came, I only had like 2 players I think I would have liked at 52 that were left. The other being Gabe Akkus. And he was also one of the positions of highest need for Green Bay at corner.
Yeah.
So and I also like that his top comps are Terry and Arnold and Jerry and Jones on Rass.
Well, that's a little hit or miss. I don't think Arnold's been quite worth a first rounder so far. I mean, careers are long, so things can change. But either way, I would say how I felt, because actually, like, literally 3 picks before, I think I was talking to you, and I was like, yeah, I'm looking at, Dennis Sutton here. I'm looking at Big Citrus here. I'm looking at Pregnon here. And then I was like, oh, and I wouldn't mind Cisse either. And the main thing was just like, I think we differed on how big of a need corner was compared to offensive line and defensive line.
Yeah.
But if we were going to go corner, this was the corner I wanted. I mean, super athletic, super twitchy, a little raw, but super willing to like help in run defense, which I think was something that we both have talked about, like watching the Seattle Seahawks run roughshod through the entire playoffs, is like your corners need to be able to be physical and tackling in order for, if you really want like a stifling defense. And so I think if you were going to go corner, I have no notes here. It's just about whether or not that was the position you would have wanted, but I'm totally down with Cisse here at 52. I think it's good value.
Yeah, and I was looking at corners in that round, thinking, well, there are a couple guys. Well, maybe if they fall a lot, we'll get somebody, be able to get a steal. That didn't happen, and so then Cisse, I think, was by far there are the corners I liked later, but in later rounds, and I felt like Cisse was the only one left who was, I would like it in round 2.
Yeah, I think it totally makes sense, like especially looking at how the board fell. There were other corners later as well, and we'll talk about the Packers did take another corner later, Damani Jackson, which we'll talk about. But I think totally fine with Cisse. I just think exciting as an athlete, and we'll be doing a deep dive later, but, fast, twitchy. I think he actually, in my opinion, watching him at South Carolina, I feel like he's a better athlete on the football field than his testing even is, and he's a good tester as well. But like he's just super, like the stop-start is crazy. Feels very Jair-esque. I know that's high praise. Jair was an all-pro corner, so I'm not saying that that's like what he's going to be. But movement-wise, it kind of feels like that. And very fearless attacking. You heard the video of him when he was drafted is also great. Like if you want to go check that out. Said he wanted to be a Packer, like his girlfriend's or his significant other. I don't know. His significant other's family is from Wisconsin, so that's really cool too. But yeah, so that's awesome. Any other thoughts on Cisse here? I think totally makes sense if you were going to go corner to go with him here.
Yeah, he fits just about. Well, maybe he needs to eat 2 burgers.
Yeah,
to get him to the weight they like. But he's not even 21 yet.
That's the other
thing. That's the other thing. He's super really young, which is a really big plus.
Which is why also like him being a little raw, like that's something where it's like, okay, like that makes sense. And if you want to hear what some scouts have to say about him, Dane Brugler had him, as overall, like he had him as a second rounder. He had him as his corner 7. I think he had him like 44th overall. And he said, quote, Cisse is an unrefined, promising cover athlete with the twitched up movements and speed to become an NFL starter. However, his pro ceiling will be determined by the development of his route recognition and ball skills. He offers inside-outside versatility with special teams upside, end quote. So that's what Dane Brugler had to say, but I think we're totally both on board with this one. Let's move on to the next pick for the Packers. Round 3, pick 77. So the Packers do trade up with the Buccaneers for this spot, traded 84 and 160 to move up here and select defensive tackle Chris McClellan out of Missouri. Consensus 130. So based on the consensus board, a little bit of a reach, although you'll see some guys like I think Daniel Jeremiah and as well as ESPN Mel Kiper also had him, in their top 100. So it kind of depends where you look as well. So what were your thoughts on this one, both with the trade up and with the selection of Chris McClellan from Missouri?
Yeah, so I admit I didn't really have him on my radar because his RAS was only 6.01 and kind of also where he was ranked, where he's got kind of falling between picks. And so that surprised me a little bit. And also I was happy when the trade happened, I was like, wait, which one of those 5th round picks did they trade? The later one? Okay. That made it much better to me. That was 160 and not 153 that they used for the trade up. Now I would say, so his RAS is only like 6.01 instead of being like in the 9s or the 8s. The Packers have gone below 8 for nose tackles a lot.
We talked about this. Yeah.
Yeah. When Clark and Slayton were picked, they were both in the 7s. So kind of not too bad. But is there Stackhouse 6.01? BJ Raji, 4.33.
Yeah, and Stackhouse
wasn't
a draft
Ford
pick.
Under 4.
Stackhouse wasn't a draft pick, but he was a guy that they prioritized a lot in free agency. Like they gave him a big bonus when they did sign him. So like there was they really wanted him on the team, is what I'm saying. But yeah, so I think I felt similarly where, so it's interesting because if you look at his RAS without the agilities, it's like mid to high eights. But the thing is, his agilities just weren't very good. But he's got really good size. He's got really long arms. He's a big man. He is a massive mountain of a man. And so I think, it wasn't necessarily like, I think I would have gone Dominique Orange here. I think a lot of people would have. And it's going to be interesting to watch their careers play out where like Orange immediately goes to the Vikings. So it's going to be a little bit of a, back and forth. I feel like looking at them, I think McClellan day one is going to come in and help the run defense like a good amount. Like I think he's really good at the point of attack. I think that's like, that's a clear value and something the team really needed. I think my two things are, I don't know what his ceiling is as a pass rusher. Now, I don't think he doesn't provide zero there. He has some pass rush juice. But
I think he's got a decent amount. Yeah. And a decent amount more than Orange. And I think that's one of the reasons why they picked him.
See, that's interesting. I feel like Orange
I started watching his tape.
I feel like Orange had a higher ceiling as a pass rusher, like higher ceiling. Maybe not.
He may have a higher ceiling, but right now, I think McClellan was doing more in the pass game, getting upfield. I think, he's got some. I guess he got some pass rush juice right now, not just the plunder.
No, yeah, he's not a slouch at pass rush. That's not what I'm saying. I just think that I think he's going to be a fine pass rusher. I don't know if he's ever going to be like a dynamic pass rusher.
Yeah, but he seems to have a desire and act to work upfield and get into the backfield.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this, when we talk about the deep dive, but Missouri's run defense was really good. They averaged like allowing just about like 3.3-ish yards a carry, like as a team, and he was a part of that. Now, the other question I have is just where he's going to line up. So projection-wise, he projects as being able to line up all over the place along the defensive line.
Right. I think he's got a little versatility there.
But in college, he only lined up at like one tech, like so at nose, 9% of the time, compared to almost 80% of the time at three tech. So he's mostly been a three tech in college. So that's a bit of a projection. So like the question is just how is he going to be used by the defense? But I think when they drafted him, a lot of the guys, I think it was Milt Hendrickson and Brian Gutekunst both talked about, the standout quality for him was versatility. And in terms of the trade up, I don't love the trade up here, but the way they talked about it was they had him as like a large gap between him and the next guy. And so you have to imagine they also talked about, and they often say this, where it's like, oh, we would have taken him with like our second round pick. And it's like, I don't know how much of the time that's
and
like,
he literally said that. We were
he did say
that. Get into the second round, or we think considering him in the second round.
Yeah, they talked about considering picking him where they picked Cisse. And so I was like, a lot of times I like look at that, like kind of like, okay, like, are you just saying that? Like, I don't know. But I mean, if that's true and you had like him with like a, top 50-ish grade and you're picking at like 84, like, and you just have to give up like a fifth to go up and get a guy that you think's a top 50 player in this class. Like, I understand the thought process there. If that's like how you have the player graded, it's just ultimately like, does he end up being that good? But if that's your evaluation, I understand the trade up. But yeah, no, I get this pick.
The other thing I would add to that is that, so did you need to trade up for him? So two D tackles went between 77 and 84 where they would have sat. So there's maybe a reasonable chance he wouldn't have made it. He would have been picked by one of those teams if they had waited and hoped.
Yeah, but I think day one, he's going to help the run defense. I think we needed defensive tackles. Like, we needed help along the interior of the defensive line. I totally understand this pick. Not necessarily the D tackle I would have picked, but I think there's like, it's totally possible like he ends up being the guy there, and that's how they evaluated it.
Yeah, I like the lineup of Wyatt, Hargrave, and McClellan there in the middle.
And it's going to be interesting, like which one of them plays the nose. Is it Hargrave or McClellan? And I think that's going to be what camp is all about.
Yeah, if they play Hargrave there, it's a very different kind of style. Yeah. They're just all rushed. Everybody's just rushing to the backfield as fast as they can.
Which, I wouldn't hate. Moving on to the next pick, round 4, pick 120. And I think this was where, all Packers fans started doing laps around the house, because this was a guy that I think I would have been fine with at pick 52. I would have thought was like a little bit of a reach. When we traded up in the third round, I was like, oh, are they going up to get this guy? But it's Deni Dennis Sutton, edge out of Penn State, consensus 73rd. So you pick him at 120. So value per the consensus board. And my only reaction was, hell yeah, baby.
Yeah, this is awesome still. This is like one of the best picks. I felt like one of the best picks of the first what, four? Oh, no,
Four rounds.
Four rounds at this point.
With the caveat that we never, really know, like, this is all about the process and, like, these things might work out, they might not. But with that caveat, I think an amazing pick here. Like, in terms of, like, a super athletic edge rusher from a big-time program in a big-time conference who had production at that conference. Like, I mean...
That's the thing. It's like, how did he fall to 120? He's at a big-time school. He was an elite athlete with a 9.96 RAS, and he had sack production in college. Why weren't people picking him earlier?
Sack and pressure production in college. So it wasn't just like noisy, like getting sacks. And you hear people talk about like, oh, like the athleticism didn't really show up on tape. It's like, well, the numbers are good, so he's doing something right on tape. Like, I don't know what you want to say.
Yeah, I have heard people say, well, maybe his agility is not as good as it tested, but still.
Yeah. And so
he tested great, and he's producing.
I think totally makes sense. Oh, we also have numbers for these guys, by the way. I don't know if you saw this. We have
right. I did see, because I know that Deni Dennis Sutton is 55, so he's going for...
Deni Dennis Sutton is 51. McClellan's 55.
Oh, McClellan's 55.
Which is interesting.
I saw somebody had Enigbari's
the numbers are weird. A D tackle wearing 55 is going to look weird, I think, to me. And then Cisse's going to wear 2, which is like, that's a cool corner number. Like, that's a good corner number. And then Deni Dennis Sutton is wearing 51, which, like, that's a good edge rusher number. That's fine. But so yeah, for Dennis Sutton, I mean, I think just totally makes sense in terms of you need more pass rush juice. Like, it just was not enough last year. And, keep in mind, you're also losing all of Gary's and Enigbari's snaps. So you needed bodies in that room, and I know you are hoping that Sorrell and Oliver can like step up here.
Question.
But
adding Dennis Sutton and Sorrell last year, are they no longer going to be interested in extending LVN?
I mean, I think, well, it's 2 questions. Were they ever? Which, like, they probably were. But I think it's a fair... I mean, it's not like he's done a whole lot so far in his, like, short NFL career. And admittedly, short NFL career. But, I mean, he's been solid. He's been fine. I don't think it impacts it that much. I just think this feels like more of, like, an Enigbare replacement.
I think so, except he's much more athletic. Yes. A lot more athletic than Enigbare.
But I think... I feel like Enigbare was more athletic than
he also got the job done. He had some pass rush moves. I remember when because I had a really good use of the long arm.
He was more athletic than he tested, I feel like. He played
that could be
more athletic than he tested. But
and he also would play some run defense as well. Did a lot of what you need to get done.
Yeah.
But he was number 2 in snaps.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. You needed
edge last year.
We needed edge rushers to, fill these snaps, and this is like a great value at this spot. And so through 3 picks, I think the idea is like you are getting pretty decent value, especially with Cisse and Dennis Sutton, and you're filling needs. So like through 3 rounds, that felt great. And unless there's anything else you wanted to say on Dennis Sutton besides like thumbs up, like this is nice, big fan.
Double thumbs up.
Yeah.
Hades 2 thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
But I was just gonna say, like, thinking about like the defensive front as a whole, and how we felt like after Parsons went down, we got like, and Wyatt was also down, we got nothing,
0.
And so we've added pass rush juice in the interior with Hargrave and maybe with McClellan as well, and on the edge with Dennis Sutton.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this was like a no-brainer to me. Like, I mean, there are maybe some other guys that could have been interesting, but this was definitely the, like, please pick this guy, like, at this spot. Moving on to another, like, for me at least, this was a guy I liked in the 5th round, was a please pick this guy at this spot. Round 5, pick 153. The Packers select Jagger Burton, and yes, it is Jagger. Jagger Burton, interior offensive lineman out of Kentucky. Consensus 179, so like about around where he was projected to go. One of the offensive linemen I liked quite a bit for Green Bay in terms of super elite athlete, can play multiple positions, or at least has experience at multiple positions. He played guard and center in college. He was much better at center in college, like his last year. So that's kind of something to keep in mind. But good enough size to play guard is the other thing. Like he has played some guard, but I think just, better in pass pro than run blocking, looked good at the Shrine Bowl. But I think just in terms of, I thought we really needed more offensive line help, specifically along the interior. I think this is like a really good swing to take in the fifth round for a guy with experience, athleticism, multiple spot versatility, hopefully.
I would say he's now already the favorite to be the swing interior offensive lineman.
I agree.
And he was one of like two or three interior offensive linemen I liked in rounds 3 and 4. And like Farmer and Zune both went ahead
much
of him.
Earlier. Yeah.
So those were the other two guys I was looking at a lot drafting, those three guys. He had the third best short shuttle for all offensive linemen in this year's draft.
Yeah.
And one of them was like Logan Jones, who went to Chicago 20 picks earlier.
Yep.
And also has sub 31-inch arms. And
he was more
Gutekunst has never drafted anybody with arms shorter than 32 inches on the offensive line.
Yeah, and Logan Jones was more of a center-only type. So, like, if you really needed a center, like the Bears did, like, that made more sense. Whereas with the Packers, like, you kind of need a guy to fill all three of these spots. I agree. I think he is probably the number one guy up in terms of, like, next man up along the interior. I think there's an argument, like, I think he should be allowed to, you know, push these guys, and he will be. Like, I'm not saying he won't be. I think he might, push some of these guys along the interior in camp. The other thing is, like, I mean, does Jacob Monk, like, is he gonna make the roster now? Like, because it feels like Monk is center only. They don't want to.
I think he is center only. He's too small
else
to play anywhere else.
Yeah,
it depends how much credence you give to that game against the Vikings, but he looked really good.
I mean, poor Monk though. Like, every time, like, Green Bay does not seem to want to play him. The coaches, at least, don't seem to want.
I think he probably would have gotten to that playoff game if he didn't hurt his bicep just before half, and then they had to go to Lesson to Smith because Monk was already out at halftime of that game.
Yeah. But
they have like bypassed him a whole bunch of times.
Yes.
I wanted to say something about Burton. So was his last year best because it was a center or because it was his last year? Is he just improving?
That's the question. Because he was markedly better his last year than his previous years, and that was the year he moved to center. So the question is, like you said, did he get better, or is he just a center? I think that's like the question.
Right. Is it theoretical versatility?
It's like, he played guard, not well, but he did play it, and then he moved to center and he was much better. So we'll talk about that on the deep dive, though. We'll have plenty of time for that. Anything else on Burton you wanted to mention? I just think, like, this to me was like also one of my favorite picks of the draft, just because, me, I feel like O-line is one of the biggest question marks on this team right now, where it's like
the O-line was not good enough last year.
No,
by a long
shot. It was bad. And we had made zero changes in any way to the O-line. I guess we'd let people leave. Like, that was all we had done. like that, all we had done
addition
is
by subtraction.
Players. I mean, maybe. You said it, not me. What was I going to say, though? Yeah, so totally makes sense for me, Burton, here. Moving on to next pick, 6th round. Let's talk about Damani Jackson. So round 6, pick 201, Damani Jackson, corner, Alabama. Consensus 194. So again, about where he was projected to go. Often a 6th round target for me and Mox. What'd you think about this one?
I was picking him a lot in the 6th and 7th round. There were only like 2 or 3 corners that in this part of the draft that I thought had any chance of being picked by the Packers, who were big enough and fast enough. The pickings were small. If you had somebody like, okay, they didn't necessarily play much or well in a small school who just had the traits, they were almost non-existent at this part of the draft. So he was like one of the last like 2 or 3 that were left that I thought they would pick. And so I like him. I think he's a good flyer. He might have been a little erratic, but I think he's a high upside pick.
Yeah,
and he's actually. His performance was not that bad last year. We can talk about that more in deep dive.
We'll talk about the deep dive. His yards per coverage snap are pretty good. So the things with Jackson are, he was a like top flight recruit. Went to Mater Dei, 5-star, goes to USC, transfers to Alabama, and I think maybe suffers a little bit from that because he never really lived up to this like, oh, he's one of the best like recruits in the country. I think I read somewhere also that he like has the California, or at the time tied the California state record in the 100-meter dash. So like crazy, stupid fast, like ridiculous athlete. And a guy who, here's what I'm going to say. Was he as good as like his projection coming out of high school? Probably not. But this is a guy with good size in terms of like what was it again? He's 6 foot.
He's 6'3", 194 pounds. So he's kind of like right in the sweet spot of not being too short, still got some density.
Yeah.
Not like really tall and spindly like some corners are. And 4.41 40 speed. So
yeah. So he's almost 6'1". He runs a 4.4, great size, great speed, really good tackler for the position. Multi-year starter at Alabama. Now, he did kind of get like his snaps reduced midway through the season for Alabama this past year and then spiked back up at the end of the year. So like kind of maybe lost his spot and then regained it. But either way, it's the 6th round. Obviously, he's not a perfect prospect, but we're talking about size, speed, like want to from a major program who started there multiple years. In the 6th round, that's at like corner. That's totally great. Like that's great for me. And I think should also be able to, have some special teams value because he is a bigger corner who can tackle. And so that makes sense. The only question to me was like, I personally would have gone another offensive lineman here rather than another corner.
Yeah.
So that's just, a guy like.
Yeah, I can't remember who was left at this point of the players I really liked. I have to go back and do a little dive on that. But yeah, I also thought they needed two corners as well as.
Well, I was just going to say, in terms of looking at the board, I might have taken, this is picking nits. I might have taken Micah Morris out of Georgia, just another like super athletic interior offensive lineman, just to kind of beef that up a little bit. But I could totally, I don't think Jackson's a bad pick at all. Like, I just think, so corner room wise, it's going to probably be Keyshawn, Cisse. I'm just talking outside corners. Keyshawn, Cisse, St. Just, and Valentine battling it out, and then Jackson 5th?
Probably Jackson 5th. At least the start. We'll see how much he can move up.
Yeah,
he's got potential actually to move up to that line. So here's a question. So that's this year, and then in 2027, is it Cisse, St. Just, and Jackson?
Well, and the question is also like, how does Kamal Hadden heal up? Because like I think he looked okay when he was like playing, and so
they wanted to play him instead of Valentine.
Yeah,
they could.
So I think that's something to like keep in mind there as well. But I like all of a sudden I feel pretty good about where the corner room is, and me, I'm not a big like corner investment guy.
Just
like I
get
just
after
think
the
it's too
quarterback.
Volatile. But I think when you look at the corner room, I think that's a good amount of competition, and also some guys who can contribute on special teams. Looking at St. Just and looking at Damani Jackson as well. So like some bigger, more physical guys. I think that's also my takeaway. The corners we added are all far more physical than I mean you can maybe read between the lines. I was gonna say maybe the reason we kept trying to bench Carrington Valentine was he just could not tackle, and like that was a problem. But you bring in St. Just, Cisse, and Damani Jackson, all guys who are like very willing tacklers. Now Cisse can get a little out of control sometimes in his tackling, but his tackling numbers are actually still pretty good, which will like his missed tackle rate's not bad, his stop rate is really good, like his missed tackle rate's like slightly above average, but we'll talk about that. But anyway,
yeah,
I think
I just want to say, like, for the players that we've talked about so far, you talked about like want to get after it. We get a lot of players who want to get after it.
Yes, and I hope.
I mean, like Dennis Sutton. He's like loves football, wants to play a line. Didn't take
didn't take falling to 120 very happily, which I love. I love that he was like a little pissed off that he fell to 120, because I don't know if you saw, he like posted on Twitter like pick 120, and that was all he posted. And I was like, okay, this guy's ready to go run through some faces.
Oh, right.
Go show some people he should not have fallen all the way to 120. Yeah, it was interesting because like another edge. I guess we'll just start bouncing around now. Actually, we'll get through Jackson, we'll get through Smack, and then let's move over. Let's
talk some Smack,
because we're going to talk about the draft class as a whole after we get through these guys, and we can talk about the physicality and maybe the viewpoint. And I hope Gannon lets these defensive players play aggressively, and we'll see, because we still have not talked to Gannon. Well, not we, you and me, but in terms of the Packers media, like he has not done a presser still, which is kind of a little weird. But
not done a press conference, and not got whatever. I thought, like, what are they doing? Like, they don't want to give anything away before the draft. Maybe they'll reveal his scheme that he wants to use there, and then everybody will know who they want to pick.
Maybe. If that was what resulted in this draft, Cool.
It worked.
All right. It worked. All right. But anyway, final pick in the draft for the Packers. Another trade up, which is interesting. Traded both 7th round picks, 236 and 255, to Seattle for 216. So round six, pick 216. The Packers select Trey Smack, kicker, Florida. Consensus 348 because he's a kicker. What were your thoughts? I mean, I think this was easily the most surprising pick of the draft.
Yeah, just picking a kicker at all is kind of a surprise.
Yeah.
Trading up, losing your last 2 picks of the draft to get a kicker is kind of shocking.
Shocking.
I mean,
I will say,
I guess
I don't hate it. Like I know drafting a kicker is usually a losing proposition. It's often very hard to evaluate kickers. But with that being said, I think that McManus coming into this year was a huge question mark. It's hard to have a lot of, faith in that after how that playoff game and how most of last season went, frankly. And now you have competition in that room. And Smack was, widely considered to be the number 1 kicker in this class. Has a good leg, was 10 of 13 from 50 plus yards in college. Great name for a kicker. So,
yep.
I mean,
smack some trays.
Is going to wear number 28. Oh, I forgot to mention also, Damani Jackson's going to be wearing 20 and Burton is going to be wearing 52, which is weird for an O-lineman that's not going to be an edge rusher anymore.
Not a rush.
That's a little odd.
And Bullard switched to 7.
Yeah, Bullard switched to 7. So yeah, that's why Jackson's going to be wearing 20. But anyway, Trace Mack 28, weird number for a kicker also, but whatever, doesn't really matter that much as long as he makes his kicks. That's the thing is the trading up to draft a kicker, on its face, not great, but if he makes his kicks, like that's all that matters. And I just love that the team viewed kicker as a spot that needed competition, because I think all of us viewed kicker as a spot that needed competition. And before the draft, it seemed like it was just like, well, we hope McManus is better this year. And it felt like, we're just going to hope he's better this year. But now it feels like, no, we have like some real competition for him at that spot. And I don't know how would you handicap it in terms of who's going to get that spot? Because I feel like it's probably favoring the draft pick, who's cheaper.
I think it's favoring the draft pick at this point. So I had been all this offseason when Goody said, "Oh, we're going to have a competition to kickers." Like, yeah, sure we are. I didn't believe for a second that there was going to be a real competition at the kicking spot. No, it's like, oh, we're just going to end up rolling ahead with McManus, and they'll give some lip service to there being competition, but it's going to end up with nothing else happening. And so from that perspective, like, oh, at least they're doing something to try to get a better kicker.
Exactly. So, not a whole lot. We'll talk about more, like what his numbers were when he was kicking at Florida, like in the deep dive. But I think just in terms of having more competition at the kicker spot and having, and like I said, I think it's probably 60-40 Smack because he is a draft pick.
70-30.
He is a draft pick. You traded up for him. Clearly there was interest in him in the building. And now, I mean, I have other questions. Was this something, did this have anything to do with why Bisaccia left? Where they were like, we want to we want a new kicker. Like we want to draft a kicker. I don't know. I'm just asking questions, which but either way, that does it for the Packers draft class. So the other thing is very few picks, only 6 selections. So
and one of them's a kicker.
And one of them's a kicker. So let's start talking about this class as a whole, though. Overall, looking at these 6 players, what were your thoughts?
I'm very happy with this draft.
Yeah.
I think it turned out very well. We got some potential starters. So, yeah, I think that we're going to get a lot of snaps from these guys. We've got, good athleticism for the positions they're in. And I think we could count on either a heavy amount of snaps as a backup or potential starters.
Yeah. And
at multiple spots.
And in terms of just, I really like this class because it was a very nice intersection of need and value. In terms of you needed some corner help, you got pretty good value at, with 2 corner selections. You needed interior offensive line help. Now, that's my one hang up on this class is I just maybe wish we had done a little bit more on the offensive line. And then there are, We did need a tight end. I think that maybe just never really materialized into like there being value, which we'll talk about. There was like a huge run on tight ends on day 2. And then we could have used another running back. It was just a really weak running back class. So like, that's fine. I think the only thing I would say is maybe could have used one more offensive lineman, but I mean, at that point, I'm just nitpicking. Like, I think really good intersection of and also not just like with a bit of personal bias, like need, value, and also players like that I already liked. So like, I'm going to like the class. Now, whether or not I'm right,
it just means you like
good
players.
Taste. I had good taste.
Good taste.
But
we'll
see.
I felt like they got players of need at positions of need without reaching.
Exactly. And the only one is
the board fell very maybe
McClellan. It just depends, because some people had him valued around there, like, and then some people had him more as like a 4th rounder, and some people really would have preferred Orange, and then some people actually did have McClellan higher. So it just kind of depends on where you look. But if you're looking at the consensus board, that one was a bit of a reach, but the rest of them were all like good values or about where they were projected, and players that most of the Packers internet sphere had like kind of targeted as potential Packers as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were talking about Dennis Sutton and Burton in the pre-draft process, and I just feel like maybe they reached a little bit by consensus on McClellan, but maybe they weren't alone in having him ranked higher. As opposed to like they're not pulling a 49ers Lynch like, oh, we don't care what everybody else thinks, we've got our board.
Yeah, people are hammering the Niners for that, although I do like the players they took, to be honest. But anyway, back to the Packers. Only one offensive player. Any thoughts on that?
I think the only thing that they really would have liked since after the extension of Reed would be more offensive linemen. And so after they went down and they got rid of like 2 spare picks, that became harder to do. So here's the thought I had. Maybe they consider like they're already adding 2 offensive linemen, late round flyers that they didn't have on the team last year.
In Glover and Williams.
Because of injury in Glover and Williams.
I think that's
so maybe they didn't feel there was room on the roster for 2 more flyers.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that in terms of
I'm
like,
not saying I'm defending that position, but maybe that's what they're thinking.
I think that totally makes sense. I mean, I just like, the more the merrier. Like, you can never have too many good offensive linemen. But I think that totally would be, that'd be a reasonable argument. I think it makes sense. I mean, I think the team wanted another running back and tight end, but this draft just didn't fall that way.
Yeah.
Which
and Gutekunst even said he wanted to get a wide tight end, and he just didn't have the opportunity.
Yeah, never. And
with that crazy run that happened, and
we can talk about that for a second, because there were 9 tight ends that went on day 2, and like almost all of them were like the blocking tight ends that people thought might fall to day 3. Like Borkircher, like went in the 50s, I think it was.
Oh, he went like 150 spots higher than consensus. He was one of the highest ones I looked at when I took a quick look at who was a reach.
Yeah, like
Borkircher, who I liked, went very high as well.
Yeah, so like 3 of the guys, 3 of the more blocking tight ends went on day 2, and then went in round 2, and then round 3. I mean, another handful of guys went, including Kasmeric went in the 3rd round. Raridon went in the 3rd round. Guys that you like had as maybe later round targets. Roush went in the 3rd round. Guys that were like more later round targets. That,
Delp, bunch of guys I liked.
Delp was a guy that like through the process, I think people were talking about as like going around there. So I never really kept my eye too much on.
Perhaps he was not. Yes, a surprise. He had already climbed up that high.
Yeah, but there were like a lot of the tight ends went, and so I think that run on tight ends maybe just was like, okay, it's just not going to happen in terms of the value. And I'm totally fine with, the Packers being like, hey, like, if we took a tight end, it'd be a reach. Like, it's just not going to happen here. So, I mean, definitely a spot where, if a guy becomes available, maybe look to trade a late round pick next year, for a tight end to, help out. But I think that's just something where the board fell that way, and it is what it is. Same with running back. But yeah, so I think the class as a whole addressed needs, got value, got players that we liked personally, which obviously is, makes us maybe a little bit biased towards liking the class. But I think for me, a solid, I feel biased. I feel like a homer, but I want to say an A.
I was going to say A- maybe, but
yeah. But I think I have to.
I would dig him a little bit for coming away with only 6 players and one of them a kicker. So they really only had 5.
Yeah, having to trade up
players.
I don't mind the trade up for smack as much because in terms of the 7th rounders, we got a couple of UDFAs that I would have been fine if we had taken in the
that
7th
maybe they
round.
would have taken.
Yeah.
We could talk
So
about those outfits a little bit too.
yeah, let's talk about the UDFAs. So we have a few confirmed, and a lot of this is per Acme Packing Company, who does a really good job having a tracker together for that. But I'm just going to run through these, and then we can just touch on whichever ones we find most interesting. Quarterback Kyron Drones, Virginia Tech. This was per Tom Pelissero. Linebacker TJ Quinn out of Louisville per Tom Pelissero. Now, he got the biggest signing bonus for all of these guys, so keep that in mind. He was also a top 30 visit with Green Bay, so keep that in mind as well. Josh Geske, guard out of Illinois per Aaron Wilson. So, shout out. He's type 1 diabetic, so shout out him. Jayden Nixon, running back out of UCF per Zach Jacobson. Now, he's more of like a special teams return guy, but so he's on that list. Safety Mervin.
I mean, he's got some great breakaway runs on tape. Both on offense and in special teams.
On offense too. Yeah, he's got some breakaway speed. Mervyn Kenyon III, safety out of Nevada per Zach Jacobson. Tight end RJ Maryland out of SMU per James Simone. And then tight end Enai Falai out of Wake Forest per Matt Zenitz. Guard Dylan Barrett out of Iowa State per Zach Jacobson. Defensive end Nayeli Kelly out of UCF per UCF football. Guard Dylan Wade out of Auburn per Easton Butler. And then wide receiver J. Michael Sturdivant out of Florida per Jordan Schultz. Dad, I'll, any which way you want to go, one or two guys maybe touch on really quick. Who did you like out of this group? What did you?
Well, I was just say Sturdivant and Kelly. I think were also both visits.
Yeah, Sturdivant's a guy that I like a lot in terms of height, weight, speed. He is the exact type of guy that the Packers have liked in the past, and you got him.
I think there were only like 2 height, weight, speed guys as UDFAs that were available, and so they got one of them. Yeah, so I liked that, and I felt like RJ Maryland was the only tight end left who had some juice. He's a little smaller, so he's a little. He's like, only like 6'2" and a bit, and 240 pounds. But
fit because he is smaller.
But he's got some good catch after run after catch ability and good receiving ability. I don't know if he's that much of a blocker.
That's the thing. The question is is he a real tight end? Or is he? Because who he kind of reminds me of? He reminds me a little of Dominique Daphne, which was a player that hung around the Packers for several years, but I never was a very full-time player. But also, if you get Dominique Daphne as an UDFA and he gives you 2 years of decent filling in every now and then, that's fine value. I really like the Sturdivant one. I think that's probably my favorite of this group. Kyron Drones is interesting just because he's super athletic, but it's just going to be I guess practice squad guy probably. I don't think he's going to be threatening for the backup quarterback job. I think it's interesting though.
Yeah, I don't think they couldn't put him as the number 2, and so then he's probably practice squad because they're probably only going to carry 2 on the roster for the
exactly.
3.
And someone pointed out is he the practice squad guy that's there to simulate running quarterbacks when you're prepping in practice, which I think there's value in that. That totally makes sense to me because sometimes you need your number 1 offense to have at least some reps against. I mean, obviously no one's Lamar Jackson, but someone who can run around if you're going to be playing Lamar that week.
Against
it doesn't
the style.
Yeah, exactly. It's you prepping against I don't know, name a statuesque backup quarterback is not going to adequately prepare you to play against.
If for example, they've been able to sign Cousins or Garoppolo, those guys are not going to prepare you for running quarterbacks.
Exactly. So that kind of could be the idea with Drones, and also as more of just a project-y, toolsy type. So I think that makes sense as well. Interesting. Only 1 running back. I thought that was a little bit interesting to only have 1 and more of a special teams guy in this group. Maybe says something about how they feel about guys who are already on the roster.
Maybe they have better feel for what shape Lloyd is in.
I was going to say Damon Martinez was a guy a little while ago that coming into the draft, a lot of people were higher on, and I think they picked him up from Seattle. So yeah,
and Pierre Strong was a good tester.
Yeah, so maybe the front office and the coaching staff like those guys more than the outside perception, and they're just going to have those guys compete for that, what is it, 4th spot, 3rd spot in camp. So something to keep an eye on. Anything else you want to touch on from the Packers' point of view, or should we maybe, leave here with a couple notes on just the draft as a whole?
Yeah, we'll see. I'm curious what Nixon will be able to provide. He's, not super fast. I mean, may have gained a little weight to just get up to 199 for his testing, for his measurements, because he was running away from people on the field. But he only tested like 4.54, which is still better than most of the Packers running backs have been, a lot of them anyway. So you could add a little bit. I think I'm very interested to see. I'm really curious about Sturdivant, and then for offensive linemen it's like Geske and Barrett, and that's and Way. So three UDFAs added to the offensive line room.
Yeah. And we're pretty sure all these guys are officially signed as UDFAs, but oftentimes with this reporting, sometimes every now and then, like one of these guys is misreported as an UDFA and is actually a tryout player. So we'll keep you updated on that.
There are a couple, like I've seen like 3 tryout players.
Yeah, I forget who they were.
But I cannot remember who they are.
Yeah, we'll keep you updated on that. Let's talk a little bit, though, about the draft just as a whole as we wrap things up here. Favorite moment, weirdest moment, whichever way you want to go, just as we kind of put a bow on the 2026 NFL draft, interesting things, any way you want to go with it.
My most fun moment had to be Michael Keaton announcing a pick.
Was he there? I missed it.
He was there. He announced a pick on day 3. Michael Keaton, Batman. So he grew up around Pittsburgh, and he's there to announce a pick. I can't remember. I don't. Sorry, draftee, but I have no idea who he announced because all I can remember was that Michael Keaton was up there. It's like Batman Beetlejuice.
Totally missed that Michael Keaton made an appearance. That's amazing. That's fantastic. I love that. I think my favorite moment was Avion Terrell getting drafted to the Falcons. I thought that was really cool. So
the family connection.
His brother plays for the Falcons. They've never played together really because they're 7 years apart. So like they wouldn't have played together in high school or college. So this is like their moment to like, and people were showing like the video from like when Terrell was drafted, when AJ Terrell was drafted, like a handful of years ago, and you see Avion Terrell there as he looks like a kid really. I don't know how old he would have been there, but he looks like a kid. And now to fast forward to now, and like they're going to be on the same team. I thought that was really cool. I thought that was probably like my favorite moment of the draft. In terms of like weird moments, some like there were some like odd, just like in terms of like who was getting drafted where. Like I was pretty surprised to see like Pregnon fall so far. I was pretty surprised to see. Remind me, the safety from Toledo who's supposed to go in the first round. I'm blanking on his name right now.
McNeil Warren.
Yeah, I was surprised to see McNeil Warren fall. Ty Simpson at 13.
He was one of the biggest fallers.
Ty Simpson at 13 was
if we're going to talk about like stories, you can't skip Ty Simpson. It's like, I mean, one of the biggest head scratchers. So either it's going to turn out brilliant or crash and burn spectacularly.
Very high variance pick. There were a few high variance picks like that, but yeah, Ty Simpson at 13, I think was definitely the talk of day one. Was like, ooh, okay. And then there was like is McVay mad at this pick? Is he not mad at this pick? Well, then now they're saying like, he like just didn't want to seem too excited because like he didn't want to be like disrespectful to Matthew Stafford.
He was saying that. I forget who I saw interview. It was like, okay, sure.
Well, here's the thing. That feels way more plausible than, Les Snead just made a quarterback decision with no input from McVay, and McVay doesn't want this guy. That seems way crazier, to me at least.
Well, that is crazy. But he still might not have been happy about it, even if it was, he had some input.
I don't think you pick a quarterback with a coach like McVay unless McVay is like 100% on board with it. Like, that's why I kind of believe the like second story, even though usually like those things are like, all right, man, like whatever you say. Because like the initial is like the idea of Les Snead just like being like, oh no, we're picking a quarterback. I don't care what you say, Sean. Like that would be insane to me. I could never understand that. So I don't know, but that was weird. In terms of, other interesting things on the draft, the tight end run, like we mentioned, was like interesting and maybe indicates a change in the meta in the NFL world on offense. Like, are we going to be seeing more heavy personnel stuff? Is that like the way that the like NFL is going? Because we saw both the Rams and Seahawks do a good chunk of that last year. So is that like just the way that the NFL is going? Everyone's, copycat league. Everyone's trying to do that now. That's interesting to think about.
Because a lot of the quote reaches were tight ends going earlier than expected. Yeah. So it's just as the positional value changed for tight end.
Yeah, I think that's something interesting. And I thought that was going to be interior offensive line. This draft was like, you see all these guys signing free agency, they're going to go higher. And that didn't necessarily happen. Rutledge did end up going in the first round, but both Basantis went in the second, and then Pregnon fell all the way to the third, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, so good draft, interesting draft. Always my favorite. maybe my favorite sporting event of the year, to be honest. Like I love the draft like nothing else. But anyway, any final thoughts, Dad, before we get out of here?
I think we can feel good about the offseason so far.
Yeah.
In a whole, the draft and free agency.
Even
though we didn't have a whole lot to spend, I think we've added quality players in both. Even though we didn't add a lot in either free agency or the draft, I think the team is better now. Certainly a lot better now than the team that finished its last game.
Yeah. Good draft. Good offseason so far. We will be here with you the rest of the offseason doing an episode a week. Starting next week, we will start our deep dives into these players. So keep that dial tuned here. Once again, subscribe, like on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, leave a comment, leave a review, tell a friend. Follow us on Blue Sky at Father Son Packer for updates on, everything Packers related. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.